So good evening, everyone. Um, we started last week, and today I'm seeing some new faces, and I don't think we can actually, go back to what we've done last week. So what we can do, probably, I think if you are in the group, you should see the slide sent to the group. You can see this slide, right? So basically, you can go through the slides, and if you have any question, you can just come back and ask. So today we'll be starting from where we stopped at last week, which is understand the risk management process. So let's start. So in this module, we'll be talking about risk management terminology, that is terms that are used, in risk management. There are some terms that professionals in cybersecurity they use when it comes to risk management. So we'll be talking about that, and we'll be talking about the relationship so personal and professional practices relating to risk management. So let me answer it. So let's start with risk. So risk and security related issues, right? They represent an ongoing concern for businesses as well as the field of cybersecurity as a whole. So, however, far too often, organizations fails to proactively manage risk. When we are talking about proactive management of risk, basically, we are saying that organizations should, put some mechanisms or some tools in place to thwart any attack or to mitigate attack before they occur at all. You put some tools in place so that if an attacker or if any risk is coming to your organization, you have the tool or the mechanism in place to actually fight that. Yeah, they can't hear me. What's going on? Mr. Ibrahim, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you. Someone said he cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. I just want to know if he's the only one or there are many others that cannot hear you. If it's just one person, then it means yeah, I think a few other persons can hear you, so you can go on. I guess it's the person's audio system.
So basically that's proactive management risk. So I was explaining proactively when we talk about proactive, anything proactive in cybersecurity, we are saying we should put some things in place before an incident occur at all. So that if any incident is going to even occur at all, there will be a tool to mitigate it. When I say mitigation, it means to reduce the incident at all. So assessing and analyzing risk should be continuous and comprehensive exercise in any organization. So when we are talking about risk in an organization, it shouldn't be a one-time thing. It's a thing that you have to be doing over and over and over again, because we witness different risks every day. So if you think you've seen it all and you just think you can just do probably risk management once in your organization and you feel relaxed that nothing is going to happen to your organization, that's a lie. You have to keep, do risk management in your organization every time. It's a continuous thing that you have to keep doing every time, over and over again. So as a member of an organization security team, we work through risk assessment, analysis, mitigation, remediation, and communication. So we explain all of those terms as we proceed. So there are many frameworks. So you can just, think of this framework like a standard, right? Like a standard. So there are many frameworks and models used to facilitate the risk management process. So basically, risk management is just the process, of analyzing, mitigating, remediating, and communicating risk. Let me get that. So, and each organization makes its own determination of what constitutes risk and the level of risk it is willing to accept. So, this pen is so. I get what it's trying to say. I think it's for my sister. I've done that. Yes. So risk is actually unique to each organization. The risk that an hospital will be facing is different from a risk. It's different from a risk that a bank will be facing. So each organization has their own unique risk that they are facing, right? So they will be the one to determine what type of risk management should be put in place, to thwart any risk that is coming into the organization. However, there are commonalities among the terms, concepts, and skills needed to measure and manage risk. So this section presents foundational terminology. Like I said, we'll be explaining the terms that we used in the field and introduce the risk management process. The first one is risk. So risk is defined as a measure of the extent to which an entity can be an organization, it can be you, it can be a system, an entity, right, is threatened by potential circumstances or events. So basically, we still, talk more about that. So basically, it is often expressed as a combination of the adverse impact. When we are talking about adverse, we are saying something negative, right? The adverse impact that will arise if the circumstance or events, eventually occurs. So, and the second one is the likelihood or probability that the risk will occur. Okay. Then we have information security risk. So information security risk reflects the potential adverse or adverse impact like hello, Mr. You should hear me.
Yes, you went off for a while.
What's about now? You can hear me now, right?
Yeah, it's better now. Yes.
So when we talk about assets, so assets is something in need of protection, something that you must protect. That's an asset. So in this room, the assets we have in this room is this interactive screen because it's worth protecting. Anything that worth protecting, like the system we have in this room, the routers, the fan, their assets to Aptech. Their Aptech as assets because it worth protecting. Anything that doesn't worth protecting, you don't call it assets. Public information is not an asset because it is public to everyone. It's open source to everyone. It's not an asset. So anything that worth protecting is an asset. So a vulnerability is a gap or weakness in those protection efforts.
Sorry, just before you move on, we also need to highlight the fact that human beings, in fact, they're actually the biggest asset. So yeah, human beings are also part of assets.
Yeah. I will still mention that. I will still mention that. I will still, cite a scenario. So a vulnerability, right, is just a gap or weakness in those protection efforts. So you can just think of a vulnerability like a loophole or a weakness in the system. So that's a vulnerability. Vulnerability is a weakness or loopholes within a system. And we have a threat. So basically, a threat is something or someone that has the capability of exploiting a vulnerability. We get that? A threat is something or someone that has the capability of exploiting a vulnerability in the system. So this building, right, like I said, the asset that we have in this building is probably our interactive screen, our laptop, staffs. Those are the assets in this company, right? So let's now imagine when all the staffs are going home, they didn't lock the door while going home. So they left all the doors open, and basically the room to this place also is open. So let's now imagine an area whereby there is an area boys, many area boys, just patrolling around, and they see this door open. They see the interactive screen, and probably in this scenario that I'm trying to actually paint, the assets, like I said, interactive screen. A vulnerability is the door left unlocked, right? And a threat is all those area boys patrolling around the compound. So basically, all those area boys, we might call them threat actor because they have the capability to actually exploit the vulnerability, which is the door that's left unlocked. So they will exploit that vulnerability by taking all of the assets. We get that. So basically, that's just it's just an English. So an asset is anything that actually worth protecting. So it might be human, it can be anything worth protecting. So a vulnerability is a gap or weakness or a loophole in a system. And also a threat is something or someone that has the capability of exploiting vulnerability. That's clear. So let's move on. Okay, this guy is actually, bringing his own scenario. So let's just take that. He said a tourist, right? Or tourists are popular target for pickpockets. At least we all know the meaning of pickpockets. So tourists are popular target for pickpockets. So the existence of pickpockets in a crowded tourist spot is a threat to the people gathered there. So that means all those people that want to pickpocket, they are what? They are threat actors. Yes. So that threat applies to everyone in the vicinity, even the pickpocketer that want to pickpocket. There are a lot of pickpocketers, threat actor in that area. You are there to pickpocket, but they can pick your own pocket too. Right? So the threat applies to everyone in that vicinity, even other pickpockets. If you are in the vicinity and a pickpocket has identified you as a target, right? Probably maybe you are a vulnerability to to the pickpocket. So if you are facing a threat actor, that's what I said, a threat actor. So the approach and the technique taken by the pickpocket is the threat vector. So the technique that a threat actor will use to actually remove the phone from your pockets, right, is called threat vector. So let's say the pickpocket chooses you as a target because they see that it will be easier or more profitable to steal from you. Maybe you are holding iPhone 15 and you are weak, right? They see that this guy can just, just move closer to him and remove his phone. So maybe you are distracted, have jewelry that's easy to snatch, or appear weak and less likely to put up a struggle. You won't even cause them. Maybe it's just one blow. You collect the phone from you. So in other words, you appear more vulnerable, right? Maybe probably because you are weak, or probably they have more muscle than you, and they think they can just see, yeah, I think that phone, right? So you are vulnerable to threat actor in that scenario. So, and the pickpocket feels they can exploit that vulnerability or weakness in you. So it's what we've actually said the other time. So a threat actor, a threat, right? We try to exploit a vulnerability. Without a vulnerability, there won't be a threat. It is when we have a vulnerability that we can have a threat. That's when they work. Without that, we won't be able to do anything. Okay. A threat is a person or thing that takes action to exploit or make use of a target organization system vulnerability as part of achieving or furthering its goal or objective. So let's say there is a vulnerability or a loophole in an organization website or something. So an attacker will try to actually exploit that vulnerability. Maybe the version of their web page has been outdated, right? And a threat actor sees that their website has been, out of date. So they will try to exploit that web page to steal sensitive information for that web page, right? So probably that's their. So the guy is saying, let's consider the pickpocket scenario from above. So okay, in the context of cybersecurity, typical threat actors that exploit vulnerability includes the following: insider within an organization can be a threat to that organization. Say, for example, people in charge of money or disbursing of money in a bank can be a threat to that bank. If they feel like they just want to steal the money from the bank, they have authorized access to the bank. They are staff, so that means they have some level of access. So for them to actually exploit a vulnerability of that bank will be easier for them than an outsider that doesn't know anything about that company. So a threat actor can actually come from within the organization. So also we can have an outsider individuals or informal groups. So either plan or opportunist discovering vulnerability. So in cybersecurity, there are a lot of tools that you can actually use to exploit a vulnerability. Any type of vulnerability you want to exploit, there are tools, a lot of tools that you can use. So let's say you want to hack anything or any bank, there are tools that you can actually, for example, maybe you want to hack a website, XYZ website, right? So there are tools that can help you to do that and find a vulnerability in that website. So you don't need to go through all the stress and the whole thing. The tool will be the one doing it for you. Then from there, you can then attack the website. We have former entities as well. These people, they are non-political, such as business competitor and cyber criminals. They are cyber criminals. That's all they do is just break into people's system, digital assets, and steal their money. We have former entities as well. these people, they are political, such as terrorists, nation states, and activists. So activists, probably they are hackers that are activists. Hackers that are activists. So in short, they are hacking probably for what they believe in. They just feel like this thing shouldn't be like this. And they think the way to do is to hack such organization. Example is Anonymous. You all know Anonymous, right? So Anonymous is an example of an activist. So then we have intelligence or information gatherers. Could be any of the above. Before you can even, attack any organization, there is something we call reconnaissance. So basically, reconnaissance is the process of trying to gather as much information about a company as possible before trying to even, hack them. You want to gather as much information as possible so that you will know where to actually hack. You want to hack the staff, you want to hack the web page, or anything. So you have to do reconnaissance, which is information gathering. Gather information about maybe a particular person or an organization for trying to exploit the vulnerability. Okay. So we have likelihood and impact. Likelihood of a risk happening and an impact after it has happened, right? When determining an organization's vulnerability, right, as a security team, they will consider the probability. I seem to skip technology. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So also technology such as free running bots and AI, which could be part of the any above. So we can use technology as well. Like I said, there are a lot of tools that we can use, basically. So, sorry, you said something.
That's just like
Yes, but that's just a software. So we have likelihood and impact. So when determining an organization vulnerabilities, the security team will consider the probability or the likelihood, that an incident will occur. Security team, they will sit and they will try to do risk assessment of an organization. They will sit and they will just act like an hacker themselves and think the way an hacker will think. That what if an hacker is coming to our organization? What are the things that they will, right? They will try to just behave like an hacker. And during that process of risk assessment of that organization, if they find any loophole or any vulnerability, then they can put some mechanisms in place so that if real hacker is coming into that organization, even if the real hacker will be able to actually attack the organization, the impact will be very slim, will be very low than not having any mechanism in place at all. So likelihood of occurrence is a weighted factor based on a subjective analysis of the probability that a given threat or set of threats is capable of exploiting a vulnerability or set of vulnerability, like what I just discussed. So the security team also considers the likely result if a threat is realized and event occurs. So after the risk assessment, right? So the security team will now be like, okay, if this incident occur, or if they are able to carry out an attack using this kind of vulnerability in our organization, these are the things that we are going to lose. They will weigh what they are going to lose in that organization, the impact of that vulnerability if being exploited by a threat actor. The impact in that organization will be weighted by the security team. So, like we said, the impact is the magnitude of harm that can be expected to result from the consequences of the following. If any of these following happen, the impact, right, is the magnitude is what we know as impact. If an unauthorized disclosure of information occurs, for example, if they hack a company and probably they steal their sensitive information, maybe their next move, or the way they want to better their company or the new product, if such information is able to be leaked out to an attacker, that can be a disaster for such organization. So that's the magnitude, right? Unauthorized modification of information. We talked about integrity last week, right? And when we talk about integrity, we don't want anything modification to come into the place, because we want everything, all the information that you are, that is flowing, to be complete. So don't let anybody, maybe man in the middle, tap into that information and try to change any information from that communication you guys are having. Remember it. So that's unauthorized modification of information. That means the integrity of that security has been broken. Then unauthorized destruction of information. So if that's to happen, there is a magnitude of harm that can be caused to an organization. So also, loss of information or information system availability can actually cause a harm to an organization. So this can actually happen. The last one can happen using what we know as denial of service attack, DOS. We call it DOS, and we have DDoS. What that does is that an attacker will try to make a service unavailable for a while, so as to carry out their bad motive. So you that you should have access to that information at that particular time, you won't have access. We'll be trying, but we won't be able to actually. And some we call the other one that we call DDoS, that one we just even bring down the service as a whole, right? And there is a magnitude of harm that can cause. Let's imagine. Okay, I don't want to mention it. An XYZ company, a finance company, losing their service. Like, people are not able to actually interact with the service for like 24 hours. The amount of money they are going to lose, like millions upon millions. So that's why the last week I said the 3 elements of cybersecurity is CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So don't let any of those 3 actually break. If any of them break, security is still shaken. So you are not secure. You guys think about the impact and the chain of reaction that can result when an event occurs by trying to revisit the pickpocket scenario. So how did the pickpocket action affect your ability to continue your journey? If you appear to be weak target, so someone that wants to pick your pocket, so and the person chooses to take your money by brute force, right? Will you be able to obtain more cash to complete your vacation or even return home? Probably not. So consider the downstream impact of that occurring. What if you are injured and require medical treatment or even hospitalized? So impact often does not stop the incident itself. The impact of an incident, right, does not stop. Sorry, the impact does not stop the incident itself. The impact that if an incident occurs does not really stop the incident until we do something. So this is the diagram that shows the relationship between likelihood and the impact. So likelihood is the probability that an event will occur, and the impact is what will happen to such organization after the incident has occurred. You get it now? So the more likely or probable an event and the higher the impact. the more severe a realized event will be. So this diagram basically is saying that if the likelihood of an event occurring is very high, right? If the likelihood or the probability that an event will occur is very high, and the level of impact very low, and the impact is very low, the result will be very low. The probability that the incident will occur is very low, right? And it continues like that, like that. If the probability that an event is moderate, right, and the level of impact is low, right, so the result will be very low. Probability that it will occur very low, or the impact will be very low. So just like that, so just trace this to this. Get that. So we have risk identification, how we identify risk, right? So how do we identify risk? Do you walk down the street watching out for traffic and looking for puddles on the ground? Maybe you've noticed loose wire at your desk or water on the office floor. If you're already on the lookout for risk, you fit with other security professionals who knows it's necessary to dig deep to find possible problem. So basically, in risk identification, what you have to do first is probably what he's saying, right, is that to even carry out an assessment of an organization, right, that's okay, let me just sit down as a security person to check my organization, the security posture of my organization, right? You have to identify risk first. But before identifying risk, you have to know the company asset itself, right? Because those are the things you want to protect. So you will try to, assess the company by knowing, their assets. It's when you know the assets that you know, okay, what am I to do first? Then you will prioritize those assets. So we still dig deep anyways. For cybersecurity professional, identifying risk is not a one and done activity. Like I said, it's a continuous process. It's not what you will do once and you'll be like, okay, fine, since we've done it once, we don't need to go back and check our security posture anymore. There are a lot of threats every day, especially when we have AI. There are a lot of threats, like as original people are evolving, fake people, threat actors too, they are, evolving. So that means you have to keep, watching out for different risks that can actually happen to your organization. So it's a recurring process of identifying different possible risks, characterizing them, then estimating their potential for organizational disruption. So it involves looking at your company and analyzing its unique situation. Probably you will get this by actually doing the risk assessment of your organization. That's where you now know the risk score of your organization. If probably the probability that they are going to be hacked, is high or it's very low. So it's after you identify the risk that your organization might face or is probably facing currently, that's when you will know the problem to their solution. So solution to their problem. So security professionals know the organization's strategic, tactical, and operational plans. So they have to, as a security professional or as a security guard, you have to know everything that is going on in your organization. You have to know what marketing team are doing. You have to know what finance teams are doing. It's until you know all of those that you now sit down and try to identify risk that is relating to their day-to-day operations. So it's when you identify those risks that we now put some mechanisms in place to fight any risk that might, occur in the future. Do we get that? So this is the takeaways about risk identification. So you have to identify risk to communicate it clearly. So if you are going to your top management and you want to actually sell, the brain behind them buying a tool so that some certain risk will not occur, you have to actually identify it first. And you have to understand that risk first to be able to convince them. Because there are some boss that will be like, no, it can't occur. No, we've been here for like 10 years. This kind of risk has never happened and it should not happen. So you have to know that risk like clearly, like knowingly, so that you can actually convince them that we need to buy this thing. If we don't buy this thing, this is going to happen to an organization. Now, if this thing happens, we are going to lose this so amount of money. So you have to identify risk to communicate it clearly. Employees at all levels of the organization are responsible for identifying risk as well. Right? A staff in finance, right? They must know the risk that is behind doing some certain things. As a finance, team or staff, you shouldn't be going to some websites that will make them hijack the section of your browser that will now lead an attacker to the organization. And if an organization gets hold of a person working in a finance section ID, so basically that means they have access to the company already. And if they have access to the company already, that means they can steal money. So you have to know, you have to know the risk that is, that comes with what you are doing in an organization as an employee. And if you know them, don't do them, right? So also you have to identify risk to protect against it. Well, that's the reason why we want to identify, to protect against them. So now let's talk about risk assessment. So as a security professional, you are likely to assist in risk assessment. It's not even likely. You must assist in risk assessment. That's your job. So at a system level, anyways. So if you are working with a smaller organization or one that lacks any kind of risk assessment and mitigation plan and program, you may have the opportunity to help fill that planning voids. So if they employ you as a cybersecurity guy or as a security guy, and you see that that company doesn't have risk assessment in place, they don't know maybe anything can happen to them. They are just doing normal thing. They just feel like nothing will happen to them. That they don't have anything an attacker can hack. So you as a security professional, you understand that anything can happen to them. So as a security professional, you have to help them out by identifying the risk that is associating to that organization. They don't know, and that's why they hire you. So as a security person, you have to help them out by putting the necessary, things in place. So risk assessment is defined as the process of identifying, estimating, and prioritizing risk to an organization's operations. Also to the assets, individual organization. So basically, as if you are carrying out risk assessment, right? You as a cybersecurity professional, you must look out for the assets, the risk associated to every of their assets, right? Risk associated to their system, you must know. Risk associated to every individual in that organization, you must know it. So, and every other organizations and even the nation, the risk that an organization is facing as a whole, or the nation, you must know as a cybersecurity person. So when we are talking about risk does not necessarily need to be technical or computer-based. Risk can be natural. Risk can be accidents, like natural disaster. To its risk. As a cybersecurity person, you must know. For example, if your company is beside a river, you know that anytime you can have a flood in your organization. So it's part of risk, and it's part of what you must, try to sell and some things in place in case things happen in the future. Right. So let's go. So a common risk assessment activity identifies the risk of fire to a building. While there are many ways to mitigate that risk, the primary goal of risk assessment is to estimate and prioritize, because there are some risks that doesn't even worth wasting your time and effort to trying to protect. So that's why I said the first thing you have to do as a cybersecurity person is to identify the organization assets. It's when you know their assets and you know that, okay, this asset is critical to the functionality of this organization. So, and you think, okay, this system is worth protecting, is this organization asset. They can't do without this. So, and you see some maybe mouse or something. Mouse too is part of the organization assets, but it's not as critical as the system, right? So you have to identify all the assets of the organization and you have to prioritize them. That, okay, let's try to do this assessment for this system first, because this is critical to this organization. If they are able to compromise or hack the system, that means the company is going to lose a lot of money. So as a cybersecurity person, you must identify it. As so for example, the fire alarm at the lowest cost and can alert personnel to evacuate and reduce the risk of personal injury, but they won't keep a fire from spreading or causing more damage. So basically, the fire alarm are just in place to mitigate or to alert the staffs of that organization. Like you said, staffs too, they are assets to an organization, right? So probably the fire alarm tool is put in place to mitigate or to reduce the impact of the injury that a fire can cause in an organization. It won't stop it, but it will reduce it. So, and sprinkler system won't prevent a fire, but can minimize the amount of damage done in an organization. It's not like the sprinkler will stop all the fire from, burning down the building, but it will basically reduce or try to mitigate the impact of that, incident occurring. So, however, why sprinkler in a data center? So basically, data center is a place where you house your most important assets, like your router, like your switches, like your server. All of those, they are put in a data center, and they don't like water. They don't like water. If they are in touch of water, they may damage the system entirely. So this guy is saying, why sprinkler is in a data center limit the fire spread? It is likely they will destroy all systems and data together. So, and a non-liquid based suppression or sprinkler system may be the best solution to protect the system for data center. So in data center, when you are installing a sprinkler, it is not advisable to use the one of liquid based, like water or something. Yeah, it will damage the system. So you use the one of non-liquid. Maybe that's what I don't know. So a risk assessment can actually prioritize this item for management to determine the method of mitigation that best suits the asset being protected. So it's when you know that using a liquid-based sprinkler in an organization that can damage the server or the critical asset in that data center, It's when you know that water can damage them, that you cannot, go to the management and tell them that, sir, when you are trying to actually buy this thing, don't buy the one of liquid, because it can damage the system or the server or anything. So, but you must know first before even trying to go to your management and trying to tell them that, sir, let's buy this thing. So the result of the risk assessment, after the risk assessment, right, the result will be documented as a report or a presentation to the management. So when you carry out the risk assessment of our organization, then you document it and present it to the management, that this is what we need to put in place, or this is what I discovered after the risk assessment of the organization. So these are the things we need to put in place so that if an attacker is coming, the wounds or probably it will reduce the impact of the attack. So after that, after identification, we have risk treatment. How to treat risk. So these are the options. Well, let me just read it. So risk treatments relate to making decisions about the best actions to take regarding the identified and prioritized risk. So after finding all the risks associated to an organization, right, these are the ways to respond to it. These are the ways to respond to it. The first one is risk acceptance. So risk acceptance is taking no action to reduce the likelihood of the risk of one. So the security, maybe the management, right? After you presented the assessment to them, they just be like, the probability is very low, right? The company might decide to actually accept that risk. Maybe the risk probably will occur after 20 years. They'll just be like, you don't need to waste our time. Let's accept it. When the time comes, then we know what to do. So they will accept that risk because the impact, probably maybe the impact is low and the probability that it will occur to is low. So the company will decide to actually accept such risk since they don't have anything to lose, probably. So management may opt for conducting the business function that is associated with the risk without any further action on the part of the organization, either because the impact or the likelihood of occurrence is negligible, it's very slim, or because the benefit is more than enough to offset that risk. That's what we just explained. Then we have risk avoidance. They just have to attend to it. So risk avoidance is the decision to attempt to eliminate the risk entirely. Maybe after the assessment, they realize that the probability that an incident or the risk will occur is very high. And when that incident or risk occurs, the impact to an organization is going to be huge. Maybe they are going to lose billions of naira. So in that, situation, they just want to accept, they want to avoid the risk from happening because they know the amount they are going to lose if that risk happens to the organization. So basically, that's risk avoidance. So this could include ceasing operation of some or all activity of the organization that are exposed to a particular risk. So organization leadership may choose risk avoidance when the potential impact of a given risk is too high, or if the likelihood or the probability that the risk will occur is also great or high. So if the impact is huge or is high, we are going to lose a lot of things, and the probability that it will occur to is high. So they will try to avoid that risk. You get that point, right? So then we have risk mitigation. So when we talk about risk mitigation in cybersecurity, it's just basically trying to reduce the impact of an incident occurring. Like we said, there is no system that is 100% safe. We did not build that system. There is no system that is 100% safe. But we can always do better trying to mitigate. So risk mitigation is the most common type of risk management, and it includes taking action to prevent or reduce the possibility of a risk event or its impact occurring. So it will just reduce it's not that it will not occur, but it will be reduced, right? So that's risk mitigation. So mitigation can involve remediation measure control, such as security control. I think we still talk about that after this module or below. So security control, which establishes policies, procedure, and standards to minimize adverse risk. That's negative impact. So risk cannot always be mitigated, like I said. You can't hear anywhere that a cybersecurity professional will tell you that mitigate is 100%. They will just try to put some things in place so that even if it's going to occur, the impact will be very slim. So risk cannot always be mitigated, but mitigations such as safety measures should always put in place. So also, we've talked about risk acceptance, risk avoidance, risk mitigation. So these are the ways of responding to risk. So then we have risk transference or transfer of risk. So it's the practice of passing the risk to another party who will accept the financial impact of the harm resulting from a risk being realized in exchange for payment. So let's say an attacker had a complaint, or probably after the risk assessment, they get to know that if you don't put these things in place, they are going to attack us. And top management might just decide and be like, let them attack us. That's why we are paying those insurance companies. What's their job? So let them act, then they will pay for it. So probably that's just the meaning of risk transfer. They will transfer the risk to another party. So this is it. This risk treatment, this how to treat risk. Avoidance, acceptance, mitigation, and transfer. Those are the 4 ways of trying to treat it. So we have risk priorities. So once risks have been identified, the next step is to prioritize and analyze the risk through what we know as qualitative risk analysis or quantitative risk analysis. We will still talk about them. So typically, risk assessment occurs in progressive phases, starting with a qualitative or subjective assessment. Afterward, further qualitative assessment or quantitative assessment, also known as objective assessment, will be conducted. So the first one will be qualitative, and the next one will be quantitative. This we did qualitative and verbalism. So understanding your organization's overall mission, right? Know their operation, what they are doing, their day-to-day activity as a security guy. You have to know all of this. So understanding the overall mission and the functions that support the mission helps to place risk in context, determine the root causes, and prioritize assessment and analysis. we've actually talked about that. It's when you know what your company is doing, that you now know what to put in place to thwart or to mitigate the risk. But you have to like you have to know your company in and out first, so that you will not be thinking that what you are thinking is their most critical assets. Maybe it's not the most critical. So you have to, sit down, try to study the organization as a whole, know what is critical to them, Then after that, you carry out risk assessment, then you will prioritize those risks and what to do first. One. So one effective method to prioritize risk is to use a risk matrix, which is this, which helps identify priority as the intersection of likelihood of occurrence and impact. So it also gives the team a common language to use with management when determining the final priorities. For example, a low likelihood and a low impact risk might result in a lower priority. So after assessment, you know that, okay, the likelihood of an incident or a risk occurring is low, and the impact after it has happened is low too. So probably they won't put it in the top priority. It will just be at the bottom. While an incident with a high likelihood and high impact, result in a higher priority. I think we've explained all of this, but it's good to actually read. So assignments of priority also may be influenced by business priority. The cost of mitigating a risk or the potential for loss if an incident occurs. So you can assign a priority to basically a critical asset, because the cost of mitigating it, probably if the cost of trying to mitigate this interactive screen is 1 million, right? Say this, after the risk assessment, you detect that there is a vulnerability in this system. And if an attacker gets hold of this vulnerability, right, the cost of trying to mitigate this vulnerability is basically less than 1 million. If the damage is caused, let's say the money you can use to actually get system is 1 million. As compared to if they attack it, let's say if an attacker now attack it and they are demanding 200,000, just be like, let them exploit us, then we give them 200,000. We can't afford to go and buy a system of 1 million. Say they are going to collect 200, we define the vulnerability. So let's give them 200,000 instead of trying to buy an interactive screen of another 1 million. So high probability, low impact, like we said, you can determine all of this basically by assigning priority to business or the cost of trying to mitigate a risk or the potential for loss if an incident happens. So we have high priority, low impact, high priority, high impact, low priority, low impact, and low priority, high impact. This is called risk priority or risk matrix. So then we have risk tolerance. We have risk tolerance. So the perception management has of risk is often likened to the entity's appetite for risk. How much risk are they willing to take? An organization as a whole. Does management welcome risk or want to avoid it? Like we said, do they want to actually, accept that risk, or they want to avoid this from even occurring at all? Maybe because of the amount they are going to lose that incidents occur. So the level of risk tolerance varies across organizations. So the level of risk tolerance of probably the finance industry might be different from a level of risk tolerance of a company that is doing or making paper or producing paper. So it varies from company to company, from an organization to an organization. So different departments may have different attitudes towards what is acceptable or unacceptable. Some company might just find, an attacker, having access to their system as a normal thing. But for some critical departments like finance, they don't want anything like that to happen. So it varies from department to department how they react to risk. So understanding your organization and senior management attitudes towards risk is usually the starting point for management action regarding risk. And there are some organizations that, their management, they don't even want to hear anything like this. And that's why I said, as a security guy, you have to understand the risk that that organization is facing before you can sell it to the management at all, so that they will understand that, okay, if this actually happened, this is what we are going to lose. I even cite an example of a company, that incident actually occurred to. So executive management and or the board of directors determine what is acceptable risk of. After carrying out this, so the board or the management, the executive, they will now sit down and try to, discuss about what they want to do about that risk. It's not your own duty or responsibility as a cybersecurity person to decide. The board, the executives, they will be the one to decide. Maybe they are going to accept the risk or they are going to avoid it. They said, okay, if you as a security person, if you think they should avoid it, and they say, no, you are not avoiding it. You are accepting it. You can't do anything. So the decision is left to executive management or the board. So there are many factors that impact risk considerations. So some organizational risk factors include financial, operational, and environmental. So to further complicate the matter, risk can change based on when, where, and how business activities are executed. For example, I think I cited this example the other time. Environmental risk may vary greatly based on geography of potential new data center location. The risk of flooding to the data center will be much greater in New Orleans or Louisiana or US. So because all of those cities, they are basically, liable, or in the future, maybe the probability that they will experience flood is high, right? So that means the risk is probably, relating to that location as compared to Saudi Arabia, which is situated in a desert environment or area. So that means the probability that the flood will occur in Saudi Arabia is very low. So Saudi Arabia doesn't need to actually, try to mitigate any risk related to flood. It's not their problem. But US and these other locations, they must take it as, priority, because it can happen anytime. Okay. There are even internal risk factors within organization which impacts risk. As mentioned previously, each organization defines risk tolerance. Some organizations, such as technology startups, they tolerate more risk than other more mature businesses, such as banking institutions. Organization mission, company culture, and constraints are all important factors that help determine what risk will be accepted and which must be treated first. So it is important for fledgling security practitioners to understand that risk involves more than computer and network system. I think I said that the other time. So the risk is not just about your computer and your systems and your server and things like that. As a cybersecurity person, you must understand that, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond technology. it can be a natural risk as a whole. Then we have security control. We have to understand security control, how we can control our security. So what are security controls? So we still come back to this diagram. So security controls, they are pertain to physical, technical, and administrative mechanism that act as a safeguard or countermeasure prescribed for an information system to protect the confidentiality of the system, the integrity and availability of the system and its information. So basically, you can just say security control is a countermeasure or safeguard that is put in place to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your system. The measure or countermeasure put in place or safeguard put in place to protect the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of the information system. To get that. So this is how to implement it. The implementation of controls should reduce risk to an acceptable level. So we have physical control. This is one way we can control security risk. So we have physical control. So basically, physical, I think we need to be reading it. So physical control is just putting a physical countermeasure in place so that if an unauthorized person is coming to your organization, right, that thing will stop them. So an example of that is building a fence, security guards, badges, and a lot of things like that. Those are the physical control that we can put in place. Maybe I should be this way. You have to. So it's just physical, like physical. So basically, they typically provide ways of controlling, directing, or preventing the movement of people and equipment throughout a specific physical location, such as an office suite, factory, or other facility. So physical controls also provide protection and control over entry to the land surrounding. So it's what I've said. It's just putting, the physical countermeasure in place so that an unauthorized access will not have access to your critical system or assets. And like I said, example is a badge. As a staff, you must have your badge with you. Fences around the company. Some have dogs. And anything physical that can actually prevent an unauthorized person to your company is a physical access. So that we don't need to be reading everything. So technical controls, they are also called logical controls. So they are security controls that computer systems and network directly implement. Those are technical control. So the implementation of technical controls also requires significant operation consideration and should be consistent with the security posture of the organization. Basically, the technical control is just putting some countermeasure, like your antivirus, your putting your antivirus in place, putting some firewalls. Thank you. Your firewalls in place. Those are the technical, controls that you can put in place. So we still talk about it. They still really talk about it in depth. So let's just do an introduction to those. Then we have administrative controls. So they are the directives, guidelines, or advisories aimed at the people within an organization. They provide frameworks. Like I said, frameworks, they are just like a standards, right? So they provide frameworks, constraints, and standard for human behavior and should cover the entire scope of the organization activity and its interaction with external parties and stakeholders. This administrative control, anyways, is mostly, put in place by top level people. They will put policies in place and be like, don't do this within an organization, don't do this within an organization. This is the penalty for it to be doing. So basically, that's administrative control. Okay. One common example of integrating security into business process via administrative control includes the human resources department. Use of onboarding and offboarding procedure for an employee. So for an employee, if you are coming in as a new staff, they will onboard probably maybe your system. They will give you system, they will give you some things, and they will give you some procedure probably to follow. That don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So those are the basic example of administrative control while onboarding. And while leaving the organization too, which is offboarding, there are some things that you must cover, right? Before leaving the organization, you must return their system, you must return the badges, you must, all the property that belongs to the organization, you must return it to them before leaving the organization. Basically, that's offboarding. So, understanding governance elements and processes. So in this module, we'll be talking about policies, procedures, standards, regulations, and laws that are related to cybersecurity. And we try to talk about the relationship among them. Continue. So we have governance elements. So basically, any business or organization, that exists to fulfill a purpose, whether it is to provide raw materials to an industry, manufacture equipment to build computer hardware, or develop software applications, construct buildings, or provide goods and services. For any business to accomplish its goal, it requires that decisions are made, rules and practices are defined, and policies and procedures are in place to guide the organization in its pursuit of achieving its objective. So, how are regulations, standards, policies, and procedures related? Please, how are they related? So, it's my help to look at the list in reverse. It's 2 hours. It's not easy. No break. The guy is talking to you. So the procedure, they are the detailed steps or step by steps to complete a task that supports departmental organizational policies. So they are just step by step, process to follow, in order to complete a task. That's a procedure. A step by step process to follow to complete a task. That's a process. That's a procedure. It cannot be simple than that. So then we have the policies. Policies are put in place by organizational governance, by an organizational governance, such as executive management, to provide guidance to ensure that the organization supports industry standards and regulations. So they are put in place by organizational governance. Let's just take note of that. Then we have standards. So standards are often used by governance teams to provide a framework, to introduce policies and procedure in support of regulations. We still talk about them, right? This is just an introduction. So regulations are commonly used in the form of laws. So regulations are commonly issued in the form of laws, usually from governments, and they are saying you should not confuse government with governance. They are not the same thing. And typically carry financial penalty if you don't comply with them. So there is no conformity in that. Now that we see how they are connected, we look at some details and examples of each. Like I said, so this governance, right? These regulations, these standards, these policies, and these are the procedures to follow. So now let's talk about regulation. Regulations and associated fines and penalties for violation of the same can be imposed by government at the national, regional, or local level. Okay. Okay, let me just basically explain, right, so that we will not have to go reading. So there are some organizations, right, that they deal with cards, like issuing of cards, like ATM cards, right? So like banks, they deal with cards. So in this type of organization, there are some regulations or standards that they must follow. That if they don't follow, there's a penalty for them. So, for example, a type of standard like IPA is 2 hours. So the organization, the standard like IPA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, right? So they are in charge of anything related to health. So there's a regulation, right? Because they are standard. So they have some frameworks and procedure that you must follow. That if you don't follow, there'll be a penalty for you as a company or as an organization. So IPA basically it deals with personal health information like hospitals. So if you are dealing with hospital should be able to follow a standard called IPA. And if anything happened to their clients or the people right in that hospital, maybe eventually they were able to break into that hospital and they were able to steal the what will I call them, the patient information. As an attacker, they were able to steal it. So, and when the whole incident happens, maybe police or something, they just come to the organization that, why did they ask you guys? Why? Tell us why. How is all of the incident happens? So the first thing that we basically ask is that, do you follow IPA? Because IPA will tell you all of the things that needed to be in place so that your patient information will not be leaked to an attacker. So if they ask you and you'll be like, no, we don't have standard in place or we don't follow the standard, then we pay a fine for it. And they can actually shut the hospital because that means you are not capable of handling people's health personal data. So GDPR basically is an European Union that controls personally identifiable information, PII of people. I think we talked about PII last week. That's something that's unique to you, something we can use to identify you. That's why I mentioned your NIN, your PII, your BVN, your PII, your name, your PII, anything that can be attributed to you to identify you. It's your PII. It's your personal identifiable information. And applies to all organization, foreign or domestic, doing business in the European. Sorry. So if you are doing business with European companies, with US or anything, right, you have to follow GDPR. So they will tell you that in order to deal with us in our country, you have to follow some things, some regulations that if you don't follow, you won't be able to transact with us. So if you are trying to make a transaction with the US, there will be a regulation in place that says, don't do this. If you do this, this is your money. So that's GDPR. That's another standard. Like you said, IPA deals with health, the health of people. GDPR is dealing with you trying to have a transaction with European companies or countries. Then standards, standards cover a broad range of issues and ideas and may provide assurance that an organization is operating with policies and procedures that support regulations and are widely accepted best practice. Basically, standards too, they are like a countermeasure or controls that you must put in place due to some standards. Standards like ISO, International Organization for Standardization. So we have ISO 27001. We have, different varieties of ISO that deals with organization security. So basically, they are developed and published international standard on a varieties of technical subjects, which include information system and information security, as well as encryption standards. So the ISO applies to security information as a whole. So if you are dealing with a complaint, right? And if you want to follow the ISO, there is a policy for ISO. I think I have. Let me show you. I think I don't. Maybe not on the system. So basically, they are just, like a lot of guidelines to follow. So for, say, a Windows system or a Windows server, there is an ISO that talks to it. That, okay, if you want to onboard or if you want to implement, these are the things that you must follow to put security to this system that you are trying to onboard. So that's what ISO is basically working from. Then we have NIST, which is National Institute of Standards and Technology. That's NIST. So it's a United States government agency under Department of Commerce and publishes a variety of technical standards in addition to information technology and information security standards. So basically, NIST to what way ISO is working. Just that they are the difference is that they are not from the same body. So ISO is basically different from different organizations as well, but basically they do the same thing. So finally, think about a computer talk to other computers across the globe. Before this time, a Dell, right, cannot talk to an HP prior to this era. So we call it proprietary, right? A Dell can only talk to a Dell, an HP can only talk to an HP, So before now, right? So now they are saying thanks to IATL, because they are the one that actually put all these things, they make it easy for different vendors or systems to actually communicate with one another. So there are standards in communication protocol that ensure all computers can connect with each other across borders, even when the operators do not speak the same language. We are speaking English and someone is speaking Arabic, right? You guys can still talk, right? So all of these things has been put in place. But prior to this time, you can't actually do that. Can't do that. So we have IEE, another standard, which is the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Also, the set standard for telecommunications, computer engineering, and similar disciplines. So let's move to policies. So let's move to policies. Policies are informed by applicable laws and specify which standard and guidelines an organization will follow. Often, policies are broad but not detailed. They establish context and set out strategic direction and priorities. So governance policies are used to moderate and control decision making. They are used to moderate and control decision making, to ensure compliance when necessary, and to guide the creation and implementation of other policies as well. So policies are often written at many levels across an organization. So high-level governance policies are used by senior executives to shape and control decision-making processes in that organization. So other high-level policies direct the behavior and activity of the entire organization as it moves towards specific or general goals and objectives. So functional areas such as human resource management, finance and accounting, and security and asset protection usually have their own set of policies that you must follow, whether imposed by laws and regulations or by contracts. The need for compliance might require the development of specific high-level policies that are documented and assessed for their effective use by the organization. So basically, policies are implemented or carried out by people. So it is implemented or carried out by people, and also it's related to law. For that to occur, someone must expand the policies from statements of intent and direction into step-by-step instruction or procedure that an organization must follow. So we have procedure. I think we've explained procedure, right? So procedure basically is just, like I say, a step-by-step process to carry out a task. So procedure defines the explicit, repeatable activities necessary to accomplish a specific task or set of tasks. It's just a step-by-step to accomplish or to carry out the task. So I think we'll be able to finish chapter 1 to 1. So ISC2, right? They have their code of ethics. And you are going to see this in the exam. You are not escaping it. It's even, I think, this is what you will see from, I think, number 1 to 10 of their questions. Their code of conduct. They will ask you in the exam. So they have professional code of conduct. All information security professionals, right, who are certified by ISC, recognize that such certification is a privilege that must be both held and maintained. Sorry. So basically, in the exam, they are going to ask you that, okay, they will actually paint some scenarios that you are in the exam and what do you want? That you are in probably exam hall and you see someone trying to steal, or maybe someone came to the hall with some paper and they give you option that according to ISC2 code of conduct, are you going to report the person or you are going to pick the person? The saints, we pick to actually leave the person because no code now. So let's actually read them out. So all ISC2 members are required to commit and adhere to the ISC2 code of ethics. So yeah, all ISC2 members are required to commit and adhere to the ISC2 code of conduct. They must adhere to it. So this is just the preamble of their code of ethics. The safety and welfare of society and the common good, duty to our principal and to each other, require that we adhere and be seen to adhere to the highest ethical standards of behavior. It's a point. So the safety and welfare of society and the common good, duty to our principals and to each other, require that we adhere and be seen to adhere to the highest ethical standards of behavior. The points, and they can actually bring it out in any ways. So therefore, strict adherence to this code is a condition of certification. If you don't adhere to this, probably, maybe if they know that you don't adhere to it, they're not going to see your results. Yeah. We do the exam and we don't see the results. So the following are the ISC2 Code of Ethics panels. ISC2 Code of Ethics panels are listed in order. The most important come first, and the rest are in order of priority. So that means the first point is more important than the second one, then the third one. So the first one is protect society, the common good, necessary public trust and confidence, and the infrastructure. You must protect all of the listed criteria. Protect society, the common good, necessary public trust and confidence, and the infrastructure. All of this, you must protect it. You must act honorably, honestly, justly, responsibly, and legally at all times. You must provide diligent and competent service to principals. And the last one, you must advance and protect the profession. Like I said, at least we will see these questions, at least 10 out of 60 questions that you're going to see in the exam. At least 10 of these, they are code of conduct. You don't play with it, it will come out. So chapter summary. Well, maybe people that didn't come last week can actually pay something. So this chapter one summary. So if you can remember, we talked about CIA triad, and we said they are components of information assurance. These are what make the security of an organization or a software that makes it assure that, okay, the security is in place. We see all of this, all of these elements, 3 elements. The first one is confidentiality, which stands for C. So probably I explained confidentiality last week. So we must protect the data that needs protection and prevent access to unauthorized individual. That's confidentiality. Making sure that it is only authorized people that have access to information, and unauthorized people should not be given an access to our information. That's self-explanatory. Only given access to people that have access, and denying access to people that doesn't have access. People that shouldn't have access to this room should not have access to this room. Basically, that's what they are saying. So you as a company, you have my information, my PII, a personally identifiable information in your server. Basically, an outsider shouldn't be able to break into that server and steal my PII. So that means access should only be given to me and probably maybe the staff of your organization. Then the high of the CIA triad is integrity. So we must ensure the data has not been altered in an unauthorized manner. So basically, integrity is making sure that data, while sending and receiving data, it has not been modified in any way or tampered with in any way. So that's why I mentioned last week. I think I cited a scenario of trying to download the software and checking the SHA of this, the sum objects. There is a value for every application on the internet, and most of the vendors, they will put that value under the application. That after downloading this application, or if you are using that application and you check the SHA value of that application and it doesn't tally with what you are seeing in our website, probably that software is not from us. Maybe it has been tampered with, or maybe it's a fake software, so don't use it. So the A part of CIA triad is availability. We must make sure that data is accessible to authorized users when and where it is needed. So, and in the form and format that is required. That's, when I was trying to cite a scenario of a bank, bringing down their service for example, you want to withdraw money. You are in need of money and you want to withdraw money. And without that money, maybe you can't leave that place you are stranded. So basically, and you are trying to log into the app, your bank app, and you couldn't. So it doesn't make sense for any customer to an organization. So the service must be up and running when needed, 24/7 for the customer. So if the confidentiality of a security is broken, the two other ones are shaken. If the integrity is broken, the other two is shaken. So the three must be complete. The information must be confidential. The integrity must be intact, and it must be available when needed. So that's the CIA triad of information assurance. Also, we covered privacy, authentication, non-repudiation, and authorization last week. So, like I said, the material will be actually, shared in the group. And so don't just basically limit yourself to what we are doing in the class. That's the reason why we are sharing the material. Because, and the reason why most of the time I'm trying to read inline is because, like I said last time, the exam is scenario based. It's not basically what you think you know. You have to read inline. You must not miss anything because it's scenario based. They will just cite one example and they will ask you to pick an answer. So that means you must understand. It's not about definition. You must understand how it works. So that's why most of the time I try to read it as I'm trying to explain as well. Because during the exam, you will sweat. Even if you know it, you will still sweat. Trust me, but it is simple. If you actually read it, it's simple. They are going to give you a lot of time. They are going to give you 2 hours, I think. Yes, they are going to give you 2 hours. And when I did my own, I think I used my 2 hours because I have to check the question again and again. So that's the reason why I say we have to read inline also to try to explain. Because it's scenario and you will see these questions similar, like they are the same thing. Even if you choose one and you know that that's the answer, something in your mind will tell you, that one too can be an answer. So that means you must understand what you are picking in the example. So basically, this is a typical example. You can see. So it's scenario based. It's basically scenario based. So this one is saying a chief information security officer, CISO of a company, at a large organization documented a policy that establishes the acceptable use of cloud environment for all staff. This is an example of what? Administrative. Why? This is the reason why. The policies, standards, processes, procedures, and guidelines are set by corporate administrative entities. That's why I mentioned executives, top management. They will be the one in charge of trying to, put administrative control in place. They will tell you, okay, this is what you guys should be doing day-to-day. Your day-to-day activities must follow this, line.
The CISO is part of the board management.
Then it's an executed person. Mhm. No, not necessarily board of it's part of the board management. But it's one of the executives.
It's proportion. But
Must be, but so that we will know what is going on. So basically, you can see. So you have to read and understand. So inline. So what is meant by non-reputation? We did all of this. And the question and the answer will be shared in the group just for you to actually check. And the explanation too is there for you to cross-check your answers. All of this will be shared in the group. So I think we should use the remaining minutes to probably ask questions, or if you have anything to contribute. Mr. Ibrahim, are you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Do you have any addition or anything you want to add?
Nothing per
This is the
se.
end of it.
Yeah, it's been an informative session. So we just take questions. Yeah, I think there are questions coming in, maybe.
Sorry, come again. We didn't get that.
Okay, yeah. I said I believe there are questions coming in. Let's see if we will have questions. Basically, how we actually address risks. It's that in most organizations, they actually set up a workshop, and then they do a scenario-based assessment. So they look at, okay, what can happen to an asset? And one other thing that we all need to understand is that you cannot protect an asset with an amount higher than the value of that asset. So let's say we want to protect a car, which is 20 million. So you don't install, let's say, a tracking system that is 50 million or 25 million or even 21 million. So the cost of protecting that asset should not exceed the value of the asset. So those are some of the key points when it comes to managing risks in terms of the mitigation. So the other thing perhaps I could add to it's the risk avoidance. Yeah. So risk avoidance is actually a situation where you feel that, okay, this risk is too high and we just don't want to operate. For instance, if you are actually operating a transport business, and let's say you crisscross the whole of Nigeria, you've been doing that for many years or decades actually, and then the issue of Boko Haram came into the picture. There are many ways you can manage that situation. One is that maybe you have a set of mopos, right? Going in front of your boss, while you drive people down to Maiduguri, for instance. So that in that case, you are trying to manage the risk, and you are looking at a situation where if there is actually, the Boko Haram guys coming to the road and all of that, the police officers or the military personnel that you have on board will be able to protect you and your passengers. So that's a way of mitigating the risk. Another one is the avoidance, right? You can just say, oh, we are not going to Maiduguri anymore. We cease our operations going to that area. And that's actually risk avoidance. So you're avoiding the risk. You don't want to put your staffs, your cars, or your buses and the passengers, you don't want to put their life on the line. And you don't even, you lose, as a result, of course, you're going to lose the businesses, right? You don't get the revenue for traveling to that location. So you have to restrict yourself to maybe the southeast, and the likes. So this is actually some of the concepts that we should all understand. So let's see if we have questions. And when you actually go through these materials and you have further questions, you can always come back, the following session to allow us address them, And tomorrow, we're going to be having a guest experts coming on board to actually talk about the life of a security personnel. So he's actually been into the business for quite some time. So he's got a lot of experience under his sleeves. He's going to share those insights with us tomorrow. So let's just watch out for that. Hopefully, an engaging session. So I'll be hosting that. So we hope to see you all, and in fact, more people tomorrow. I know evening is always a very, particularly a Friday evening. It's actually a very busy time. So we really applaud you for coming and taking the time to be part of this session today. Thank you all.
So, our next class, I think this is the end of chapter 1, right? And our next class will be tomorrow, 9 to 11 in the morning. So we will share the material with you tonight for the whole chapter 1 and the questions relating to chapter 1. So then we can move on to chapter 2 tomorrow. So basically, if you see me reading inline, like I said, when you see the question, you understand what I'm trying to say. It's a scenario-based question that, like, you just have to understand. You know, when you are doing maybe networking, security, or something like that, you can just, decide to understand and need definition. But in this their own case, you just have to be, you must not even miss anything. Because if that thing you miss can actually cost you a mark. So I'm trying to actually read inline and also try to explain it to you guys so that you understand better. So my own is just to actually explain so that you can understand. And your own is just to go back and sit and read, understand your own thing, and come back with questions so that we can be on the same page. But in this chapter 1, if you find anything challenging, you can just, anytime the group is open 24/7, just come to the group, ask your questions. Any questions at all relating to IT, just come to the group and ask. We have people on standby that will actually respond to you. So our chapter 2 is starting tomorrow, 9 to 11. And I think we all know it's just 6 weeks, program. It's just 6 weeks program. And so that means we have to cover the whole material, and it's basically 6 modules. Tomorrow will be the second module of what we have to cover. That means after chapter 2, we still have 4 modules to go, just for 6 weeks. So we have to move and also try to explain, You have a question? Sorry, I can't hear you. Not necessarily. You don't need it. But it can be an added advantage. But we don't really need it. I've not really been coding for like when I started working. No, I'm not saying I'm not saying that though. I'm saying don't let it be the reason why you won't enter the cybersecurity field. As a penetration tester, you may need it. It's an added advantage. You have an edge over people that can't code. But that doesn't stop you from becoming a cybersecurity professional. You get it? You can be good as good at in cybersecurity without coding. So that's it. Any other question? Sorry.
Yeah, and for those online, if you have questions, please do raise your hand. There's an icon to raise your hand. I think for those on the phone, you just have to click on the three dots, and you'll be able to see that the hand raising option, and you can just raise your hand and ask a question. And we'll unmute you rather, so then you can ask your question.
Please don't let us wait till finish the whole module before we start reading. Let's try to read along, but that's one thing with this chapter. You need to understand chapter 1 to be able to understand chapter 2 more better. So try to actually, understand everything with covered. So if you don't understand, come to the group, ask questions, go to YouTube, watch videos. If you have any question, like I said, just come to the group. We'll be there for you. So basically, that's the end of today's lecture.